I'm Tony, standing in the cold, sterile courtroom. I watched as my mother's face crumbled under the weight of truth. Her once proud demeanor was replaced by a look of sheer panic as the judge referred the case for criminal review. It was a moment I'd waited for, a moment when the lies she built her life on finally started to unravel. But this victory came at a cost I'd been paying since I was a child. My family was part of the upper echelon in New York City. My father, Richard Thompson, was a high-profile corporate lawyer, and my mother, Victoria Thompson, was a socialite who thrived on appearances. They lived in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, a place filled with luxury but devoid of real warmth. My younger sister, Lily, was the apple of their eye. She had my mother's delicate features and a charm that could light up a room. I, on the other hand, had my father's strong jaw and dark eyes, and I seemed to be a constant reminder of something my mother wanted to forget. When I was 8, my parents sent me to live with my grandmother, Edith, in a small beach town in Florida. There were no big fights, no tearful goodbyes, just a quiet car ride and a simple explanation that it would be better for me to stay with Grandma for a while. That while turned into years. Grandma Edith was the opposite of my parents. She was warm, loving, and always there for me. She taught me the value of hard work and self-reliance. I learned early on that if I wanted something, I had to earn it. By the time I was 16, I was working part-time at a local diner and applying for scholarships. At 18, I got a full ride to a prestigious university, majoring in computer science and finance. My college graduation should have been a proud moment, a time for my family to see what I'd achieved on my own. But my mother called me a week before and said it was a failure ceremony. She said I was wasting my time and that I'd never amount to anything. On the day of graduation, as I walked across the stage, I knew exactly which seats would be empty. My grandmother was the only one there, cheering me on with tears in her eyes. Meanwhile, my mother was hosting a fancy party at their penthouse, posting pictures on social media of a perfect family. After graduation, I decided to focus on my career. I started a small tech startup that analyzed financial data for fraud detection. It was a long and difficult journey, but I was determined. And slowly, my company started to gain traction. Insurance companies, banks, and government agencies were interested in our services. 4 years later, a large corporation made an acquisition offer for my company. The amount was more than I'd ever dreamed of. Suddenly, my parents, who had ignored me for years, were interested in me again. My mother called me, her voice soft and sweet, asking me to come to a family meeting. I told her it was too late, but I knew I had to go. I'd found something in my grandmother's house that would change everything. 3 weeks before my mother's call, my grandmother passed away. It was a devastating loss. After the funeral, I went through her house. In the back of her closet, I found an envelope with my name on it. Inside was a picture of my mother with a man who was definitely not my father. There was also a note from my grandmother, warning me not to trust my parents, sudden kindness, and a business card for a private investigator named Jake Harris. I met with Jake, and he started looking into my family's affairs. At the same time, I dug into the financial details of the so-called Thompson Family Foundation that my parents presented to me at the family meeting. The foundation was supposed to support underprivileged students. But as I looked closer, I realized it was a sham. The budget was bloated, the vendors were connected to my mother's friends, and my sister was getting a hefty salary for a job that didn't seem to exist. Jake also found out that my parents were in financial trouble. The penthouse had been refinanced multiple times, and my father's law firm was on the verge of bankruptcy. They saw my success as a way to save themselves. But the biggest revelation came when I decided to do a DNA test. I got samples from my father, my sister, and the man in the picture, whose name was Henry Black. The results were shocking. I was my father's biological daughter, but Lily was Henry's. It all made sense now. My mother had sent me away because I looked like my father, and I was a constant reminder of the life she'd tried to hide. When I confronted my parents with the DNA results, they tried to deny it. They launched a smear campaign against me, spreading false stories in the media. They said I was unstable and greedy, trying to undermine the family foundation. My reputation took a hit, and I started losing clients. But I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I hired a tough lawyer, Sarah Miller. She started building a case against my parents, collecting evidence of the fraud and defamation. And then, in court, the truth finally came out. As the judge listened to Sarah present the evidence, my mother's world fell apart. The foundation was a fraud. The emails they'd used to smear me were fake, and the DNA test proved the long-hidden family secret. My sister Lily was in shock. She'd always thought she was part of this perfect family, but now she realized it was all a lie. My mother was sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud and false reporting. My father retired early, his reputation in tatters. Lily left New York and started a new life under a different name. I, on the other hand, used the money from the company sale to start the Edith Thompson Foundation. It was a real charity focused on providing education and support to underprivileged children. I also built a new family made up of friends, colleagues, and the students we helped. Looking back, I realized that my family's rejection was never about me. It was about their own insecurities and secrets. I learned that true family is not about blood, but about the people who support and love you unconditionally. And I'm grateful for the journey because it made me the strong and independent person I am today. I still think about the little girl I was, sitting at the breakfast table, asking why I looked different from my sister. I wish I could tell her that one day, she would find her own truth and break free from the chains of a family that didn't deserve her. And that's the lesson I want to share with anyone who has ever felt invisible or unworthy. Your worth is not determined by the people who reject you. It's determined by your own strength, resilience, and the love you give and receive.